You're listening to Boomers Today with your host, Frank Sampson.
Welcome to Boomers Today. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. Of course, each week we bring you important and very useful information on issues facing baby boomers, their parents, and other loved ones. And I can't thank all of you enough for all your support. Our listeners are growing each and every day. We do it organically, and it's because of you sharing information on our podcasts. And many of you listen to us on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and many of the others. So thank you, and appreciate you sharing these podcasts with friends and family. And I know why you do, because we have great guests on our show. And I'm not going to disappoint you today. We have with us Professor Wendy Moyle, and Wendy's research focuses on finding evidence for best practice in care of older people and those with dementia. She has a keen interest in technologies and within a social robotics laboratory. She develops and evaluates assisted technologies and social robots. She works with a multidisciplinary team of researchers from Australia and internationally from the UK and Japan. She has received several awards and leads a technology collaborative, the Australian Aged Care Technology Collaborative, that aims to increase efficiency, effectiveness, and quality of care of older adults in aging services through identification and adaptation of existing technologies and development of new technologies. Wendy, thank you so much for joining us on Boomers Today across the other side of the world here. It's wonderful that we could do this. Good morning to you.
Well, it's good morning to yes, good morning or it's good afternoon to you. But thank you very much for having me, Frank. It's my pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah. So, when I read up a little bit about some of your research and kind of your area of specialization in robotics, robotics and dementia care, I kind of like felt, really, we're ready for that. I mean, is that now, or is that just something we were talking about for future years?
No, it's definitely now. And certainly when I started in this area, it was about 15 years ago, people thought I was quite mad. And I had a lot of people telling me that I was a very bad person, I guess. They thought that I was trying to take over the workforce and that I was trying to dehumanize dementia care, and that I was bringing in robots, technologies, rather than humans into the care of people with dementia. And that's certainly been the furthest thing from the truth of what we're actually trying to achieve. And it took quite a lot of time to actually convince people and show them the benefits of using robotics and other technologies in the care of people with dementia, and also helping their carers also be able to provide care in a more efficient, effective way.
So take me through this. Listen, I want nothing more than for this to work well. We have a shortage of caregivers today all around the world. And if there's anything that could be done to provide good care for everybody, especially those with various forms of dementia, I think it'd be great. But help me understand it, how it works. I mean, I've worked with a lot of people with dementia, and as you know, I'm in the industry. Take me through it. Help me understand how it works.
Sure. Yeah. It does sound a bit sort of new world when you first start talking about it, but when you think about what the symptoms are of people with dementia, it starts to make sense. So we tend to work in the areas of trying to improve communication, trying to provide opportunities for people in terms of entertainment, trying to provide opportunities for stimulation, and also trying to engage people with dementia with others. So let me take you through those four aspects. So people with dementia have a lot of difficulties very early in their condition in terms of word finding. So often this becomes so distressful for people that they stop speaking. So rather than have this problem that they don't want to show up, that they can't remember the words, they can't remember the people, they'll stop communicating. And this becomes quite distressing for them and also for their family members as well. So we use robotics. So we use different types of robots, but predominantly robots that are called humanoid robots. So if I describe one of these, so one of these is a robot that's like a small child. The small boy, he weighs around he's about 50 centimeters in height, so small, like a baby, and about 3.5 kilos in weight. And basically he is teleoperated. So this humanoid robot doesn't speak by himself. He requires an operator to operate him. We provide this robot, and he's a bit strange looking, and people often say to me, "Oh, do people with dementia like this sort of robot?" We actually find I've only ever in my experience found one person with dementia who doesn't like robots, and that person threw the robot across the room and broke it. One person in hundreds of people. So they're actually quite they're quite well liked. So anyway, this humanoid robot, basically we use it to provide an opportunity for people with dementia to tell their story, to provide opportunity for a narrative. So for example, we give the robot to the person. The robot, through the teleoperator, will talk to the person. So it might say, "Hello, Frank, how are you today?" You might say, "Oh, I'm fine." And then the robot might start to ask questions about you. "Well, what did you used to do, Frank? What is your job? Tell me about your job. Tell me about your family." So trying to get an opportunity for the person to tell their story. We find this a very effective way for the person with dementia to become engaged. And rather than using a human, they actually feel quite comforted by this very small robot. So it's a bit like, if you bring a baby into a room, people ooh and gar over this small human being that looks so cute and provides an opportunity for us to hold and comfort it. And it's the same with this robot as well.
It's interesting because what goes through, I'm sorry to interrupt, but what goes through
Yes.
my mind when you say a robot, I don't know what
Mhm.
goes through others' minds, but I'm thinking of years ago. I don't know if they had this in Australia, but it was a cartoon called The Jetsons, and Rosie,
Yes.
Rosie the maid,
Yes.
with robot with the arms and legs.
Yep.
That's what goes through my head. But you're talking something the size of maybe your hand.
Oh, no. So like a small baby, a baby
Okay,
size.
got it. Okay.
Yes. So really it's a baby size robot. That particular robot is. We use other robots for that communication as well. So for example, we try and engage people in play as well as communication. So a lot of my PhD students, for example, are software engineers. So one of them at the moment, Don, he is from China, and he, as a software engineer, he's been working with the robot in terms of programming the robot to play and engage with people with dementia. So this is also a small robot, and we find that small robots actually work quite well because people with dementia sometimes are frail. They're small themselves, and so having something small that they can hold and interact with is actually quite beneficial. So this particular robot that's called Adam, he talks. He's programmed to talk and talk back to the person with dementia. So, for example, he is programmed. He would come in and he would sit on a table, and he might say to you once again something like, "Hello, Frank. I'm here today to play with you. What would you like to do? And he would run through the sort of things that he's able to do. And the sorts of things might be playing games. It might be games such as colour sorting, object sorting games. It might be discussion games. So people with dementia can choose what they want to do. He can also dance. He can interact with the person. And so it provides an opportunity to, I guess, engage the person in a time that they wouldn't have. Now, in our work very early on, this is quite a number of years ago, we did a time and motion study looking at people with dementia in nursing homes and how many minutes in a day that they spent in conversation with nursing home staff. How many minutes do you think it was, Frank, in a 24-hour day period?
In a nursing home or assisted living? I define those two.
Oh, okay. So yeah, in Australia, we only have nursing homes. So in a nursing home, this is people who are they're not doing independent living. They require some form of
I would say in the course of a day, just conversation in a nursing home. And I guess if it was 10 minutes, you're kind of lucky, but maybe I'm being harsh.
Yeah, you're being a little harsh, but it was basically 28 minutes in a 24-hour day.
Okay.
So very short period of time where people were having face-to-face contact. So basically our hypothesis, I guess, or our premise was that by giving a person with dementia an opportunity to interact with a robot was not taking away the human element of care, because they weren't actually getting it. They were getting more interaction by having a robot introduced into their care than they had previously. The other sorts of robots, you want me to go on?
No, go ahead. I'm sitting here just amazed listening to you. So go ahead. Yeah, I have questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So the other sorts of robots we use, that we use a lot of animal robots. So, people with dementia often come into a care situation and they've had a dog or a cat or a bird or something like that, but they're not unable either to bring it into the nursing home, or due to their dementia, they're no longer able to care for the animal. So, for example, you have to toilet the animal, you have to provide it with hygiene, you have to be able to remember to feed it, etc. So if you have dementia, you probably will forget to do some of those routines, and the dog or cat, bird could die. So we provide animal-type robots that can interact with the person as though they are an animal and provide comfort to the person. So giving them an opportunity to, I guess, cuddle and connect with the robot, but without the fear that the robot's actually going to die. The robot will require power. So once a day, it will require connection to the power. And normally we have to, provide some opportunity either to connect the person or connect somebody else to remind the person to connect the robot to the power. But these are very beneficial sorts of robots. And in our work, we've done some of the largest studies in the world with our robotic work, and we've tried to use these sorts of robots also to reduce what's called BPSD. So that's behavioural psychological symptoms of dementia. So people with dementia at some stage in their trajectory of dementia will get quite severely distressed. So these behaviours are things such as they'll get agitated, they might get aggressive, they might do things such as spit or kick or bite. And it's not because they want to do it, it's because of the dementia. So it's destroying the brain. They may no longer have social judgment. They may no longer be able to control themselves. So we try to use robots also to improve pleasure. to reduce that distressing symptoms. And we've used one of these robots, an animal robot, to we had 415 people in a study, and what we found is this animal robot improved pleasure, reduced agitation, and improved a verbal and engagement response in people with dementia. So very beneficial response.
So I do have a I do have a couple questions,
Of course.
I'm your typical boomer. I forget a minute later what I wanted to talk about. So, so are there is this in testing right now still, or is this going on where people are? Is it beyond the testing stage, or is it being used in a?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So some of the robots we use are at feasibility stage. So I have a social robotics laboratory, as you explained to the listeners, and in that laboratory we test in a feasibility way the robots, and we make sure that they actually work before we take them out into the field.
Gotcha.
And then once they're out into the field, we do large control trials. And then once they're okay, we then, through our Australian Aged Care Collaborative, we inform the audience of, the sorts of robots that are available that we believe, are useful for their use. There are some awful robots around, Frank. All of our work, we use what's called a user. We bring in end users into the design of the technology. So we bring people with dementia, their carers, health professionals in to discuss the design of robots before anything's done. So currently one of my PhD students, Matt, he is an industrial designer, and he is designing a new robot for people with dementia, and he's been working on this for some time, but with those consumer groups. So basically his aim is to produce a robot that will be of good use for the consumers that it's being used for. Interestingly, as one would probably assume, what people with dementia want and what carers want are actually quite different. So this is a bit of a challenge that he's got at the moment is, where do you place your emphasis on the robot? But yes, so some of these are available. You can purchase them. Some of these are still in the testing phase.
So what would you say that today, and what maybe after our quick break, we'll talk about the future of them, but today, is it are the robots mainly utilized for conversation, communication? We're not talking about care. We're talking about communication and hopefully to help with what is a huge problem today, and that's loneliness. Is that more today where it's being utilized?
Certainly that's what myself and my group have concentrated on. My colleagues in Japan are concentrating more on the care aspects. So, for example, in Japan, you can purchase a robot that's a lifting robot. You can purchase a robot that's a feeding robot. You can purchase a robot that will, fiddle linen trolleys or take linen around the room. So they're really constant because of the labor shortage in Japan and because of the aging population in Japan. They have really concentrated on filling that labor shortage and provision of care. We have not done that. We are concentrating on trying to use technologies to keep people in the home for longer. So those sorts of technologies are things such as surveillance technologies, health measurement technologies to be able to send that information back to GPs and families, but not actually provision of care. So Germany also is doing some work in that. There is some very impressive robots that have been produced, very, very expensive. And, these sorts of robots take multiple years to produce. And that's why I think they've not been, they are available, but they're not being used everywhere. Even in Japan, where they've got multiple robots available to provide care, they're not used everywhere. So there is still a stigma in society about, should we be using these? And that's why we, in terms of our work, also try to make sure that what is being produced is efficient, effective, and cost effective. So all of our work also involves a cost-effective analysis, because it's no use buying a robot that costs $10,000, for example, and then it doesn't actually do the job, or it's so costly people can't use it.
Right. So Wendy, we're going to take a real quick break, I promise. And then when we come back, certainly you'll be able to share with people where they could get more information and talk a little bit more about what you think the plans are for the future with these remarkable robots. So my question to all of you is, do you know anybody who may be concerned about an older driver? Well, Senior Care Authority's Beyond Driving with Dignity program is a facilitated self-assessment program for older drivers. This program has been designed to serve as a vital tool to facilitate older drivers and their families as they make appropriate decisions regarding the future of one's safe driving career. If the individual is a safe driver, an advisor will provide him or her with strategies on how to remain a safe driver as they progress through the aging process. If driving retirement is the appropriate decision, then an individual and their family are offered possible alternatives, resources, and a specific plan to ensure a smooth and successful transition from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. To learn more, you could go to www.beyonddrivingwithdignity.com or call 877-907-8841 to connect with a Senior Care Authority advisor in your area. We're back with Professor Wendy Moyle, who has been involved in research and technology within the robotic field and helping to care or work with people with dementia. It's fascinating to me. So you mentioned on the before the break, you kind of inferred about the expense. Is this beyond what most people can afford? If so, do you see this changing?
Look, any development of any new technologies is very expensive, and we have run into enormous problems whereby, I think also with COVID, it's reduced the opportunity for research funding, etc. And we've had times where we've had no funding. And I know I work with colleagues in Europe, and with Brexit, that's reduced a lot of the funding opportunities there as well. And often what happens in terms of research is often researchers are thinking about, let's get the money for the research, but not actually thinking about the commercialization of the product. So in terms of carers or people wanting to buy these products, I don't believe they're beyond the purse or the wallet of a carer or a family, for example. It's a matter of being able to show them the benefits. So, for example, we use robots that are called telepresence robots. And these robots are human height robots, and they're basically, we use them to connect people with dementia with their families or friends, etc., overseas. So they're really like, in a way, they're like a Skype on wheels. And so you could say, well, why do you need those sorts of robots? Because, we've got an iPhone with, opportunity to connect, or an iPad, for example, to connect to those people. One of the biggest problems when you have dementia is, and even when you're older, is trying to learn new technologies. It's very difficult. And so what we find is in any of the robots that are being developed or being used is we're looking for opportunities that whereby the person with dementia doesn't actually need to be concerned about how to connect to the robot. So, for example, the telepresence robots, the software is given, for example, to a family in New York, and the robot is given to the person, the elderly mother in Brisbane, for example, and the family in New York can drive the robot from New York, so it's mobile. It can drive around the home. They can oversee the person's care, so they can check that, have they been having their medication? Have they been bathing? Is the house in good order? Is there anything maintenance that needs to be done? They would have a lot of difficulty doing that if they were trying to do it, for example, on an iPhone or an iPad or any other Android opportunity, because the person with dementia would have to know how to hold the technology, where to position it, how to use it. And what we've found in all of our work, that is not possible for them to do. And so these sorts of robots, we're talking, $3,000 to $5,000.
Okay.
So one could say, gosh, that's far too much money, but, an iPhone, etc., is probably going to cost you, I don't know, $1,600, $1,800. This is mobile. It provides a lot more opportunities and can be used for many, many years. So we've had some of our robots for probably 5 to 10 years. So in terms of cost effectiveness, they're actually very good.
Yeah.
And when we've got nursing homes, for example, to buy them, they're multi-users, so multiple people can use them, and so it's not just a one-off person. So
Right.
my belief is it's about actually convincing society that these things are available. These things will improve quality of life, quality of care, quality of opportunities, and will reduce the burden of carers.
So before we, maybe final question before we get to it on maybe where things are going in the future with this, I failed to give you the opportunity to share with our listeners how they could learn more about you and what you're doing, a website. Go ahead and share with them.
Yeah. So if people want to find anything else about me, I think if they just put in Wendy Moyle into a Google search, you will find lots of information about myself and my research, because there's been lots of social media, lots of television programs and radio, etc. If you want to know more, I am at the Menzies Health Institute, Queensland, which is at Griffith University in Brisbane. And we have a website, and on that website, you will find information also about me. Thank you, Frank.
Well, thank you. So I know you had mentioned, you're in Australia, you've done work with the UK and Japan. What hasn't been mentioned, and I'm only going to bring it up because this is where I'm based, is the United States. I mean, has there been any, movement at all on this here in our country here?
Yes, there are some people doing some work, probably not as much as maybe even in Canada. I have tried to connect with some people in the States who were very happy to do this work. We tried to get a grant an NIH grant a few years ago, but we weren't successful, and then COVID broke. So we've not gone back to looking at that again. But money is the biggest issue. Money is an enormous issue, Frank. I mean, it's every researcher will tell you that.
Yeah, right.
And it's I think it's the way forward. There's lots of ideas, lots of opportunities. There's lots of fantastic young software engineers, etc., around who, with working with people, like myself and my team, can create great technologies. And that's, I guess, my final point would be, Frank, that I get asked to look at a lot of technologies, and my first question to people is, where did you get this idea from? How did you develop it? Because what I find and have found in the past is often people, developers have thought, oh, got this great idea, I'll make a lot of money from it, develop something because they've got the ability to develop it. But because they don't actually understand older adults, they don't understand dementia, the technology actually doesn't work. Right. And so this is my message I try to get out to everybody is please work collaboratively in multidisciplinary teams, and within that team, make sure you have people with dementia, older people, carers, etc., so that you can get a really good end product.
So what's your hope? I mean, you've obviously put a lot of time and effort into this, and it's just, I commend you on everything that you've accomplished. What's your hope for our future with this?
I hope that all of the young people who are coming along behind me will continue this work, because I think, yes, you're right. I have put a lot of time and energy into it, and I think I would hate, for it to fall over. One of my young postdocs is a wonderful woman. She's been doing work in terms of pain assessment using technologies in people with dementia. Her name's Li Wei Pu, and she is doing some fantastic work. And it's people like her that I hope will, continue this sort of work. And I hope governments will get behind it, Frank, because I think it requires quite a lot of money. In Australia, we are in a difficult situation. We don't have the same sort of philanthropic energies that you do in the States. So we don't have people who donate large amounts of money for research. So that's something that I hope in the future, people will realise this is important for their own health, their family's health, etc.
Well, we're going to do our part to try to use this podcast to get the word out to a lot of people. So I hope it helps just a little. I hope it does. And thank you so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yes. I want to thank everybody out there for joining us on Boomers today. Please be safe, and we'll talk to everybody next week.
You've been listening to Boomers Today with Frank Sampson. To learn more about today's show, visit boomerstodayradio.com and join us next time for another edition of Boomers Today.